Hey, this is Rory Diamond, and you're listening to The Scott Grant Show on 103.9 FM.
Hi, this is Scott Grant. You're listening to The Scott Grant Show. And I'm here in the studio today with Jennifer Price.
Eager to learn more about this Canine for Warriors.
And Rory Diamond. And we're thrilled to have you, Rory. I've been a fan of yours for years now. And I was thrilled to see you get elected. And I think what you're doing for the veterans is incredibly admirable. Tell us a little bit about what drives you. Why do you do what you do?
Oh, so we get to do two great things at Canines for Warriors. We get to rescue dogs from high-kill shelters across the country, and then we train them to be incredible service dogs for disabled veterans who've got severe post-traumatic stress or traumatic brain injuries. And I can't think of a better way to spend your life than to rescue dogs and train them and let them essentially rescue the warriors that were suffering from the wounds of war. It drives me every day. This is the best job ever.
Oh, that's great to hear. When I think about it, one of the things I always think about is that veterans are really popular. And so are dogs, pets generally, but dogs specifically. And so you marry those two things. You're marrying things that people really love, particularly in our area. Is that true?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, veterans should be popular. Without them, we don't have our liberty. We don't have the freedom in this great country. So that part's easy. I think all of us owe them a debt. But rescuing the dogs and helping them find each other, you see these two souls come together and hope reborn right in front of you. It's an amazing thing to see.
We saw a guy when we were there. We went and did an event with John Miller from Rock Solid Law, and we spoke at the Canines. It's an amazing complex.
Yeah, most people don't realize we have an entire campus in Nocatee here in Ponte Vedra, and it was beautifully donated from the Davis family, the Park Group, and 139 subcontractors came along and helped us build that thing. So we walked in and had no mortgage. We didn't owe a penny, and it's incredible what a community can do when they rally together to solve a problem.
That's definitely amazing. How many buildings are there? It is a complex, as you.
Yeah, it's a campus now. So we're over 22,000 square feet, over 8 buildings, and we just broke ground on the Chartrand Family Warrior Resource Center. Obviously, sponsored by the Chartrand family, and there we're going to be able to help even more warriors. So we're excited about that.
How many warriors do you help a year?
So about 144 warriors a year. To put that in perspective, if you took the next 5 organizations that are doing what we do, they won't do that over the next 10 years. So we're by far the nation's largest helping disabled veterans.
And you want to help more?
Yeah. So the exciting thing that we're doing at Canines for Warriors is we're about to build the world's largest rescue dog training center off Highway 1. Again, the Davis family, the Park Group, gave us 5 acres, and now we are undergoing a campaign to build this thing where we'll have 250 dogs in training at any given time.
That's amazing. How many trainers?
So right now we have 14. When the mega kennel, as we're calling it, is built, we'll have over 40 dog trainers working for Canines for Warriors.
The mega kennel.
That's right.
Is that going to be the official name over the door? Or?
Yeah, I guarantee you that some fancy sponsor will own that name, but it's informally called the mega kennel right now because no one's ever done this before. We're putting on steroids what we're already doing, so we're going to quadruple in size.
I've seen you flying all over delivering dogs. How did you get on that duty?
Yeah, so every once in a while you need to promote what Canines is doing in another market. So we've expanded to San Antonio, and so for example, we're flying dogs back from San Antonio on private jets as a way to kind of increase awareness. Of course, we're not paying for any of that.
As a volunteer, can I do that?
What, you want to fly with a golden retriever on a G5?
Sure.
Sounds like a good day.
Yeah.
So you could be like a dog flight attendant? Is
Yes.
that the title for
dog
what job?
attendant.
I'll bring the dog treats.
That'd be great. I'm sure they would like that.
Now, I will say this: dogs on a private plane is not as much fun as you may think.
Yeah, it sounds glamorous.
Dogs in the back of a car, they have trouble like standing up and freak out. On a private plane, it's even worse. So it's not that much fun.
Long ago there was a movie, and I think the movie was called Barbarians at the Gate.
Yeah.
And Johnson was the president, I think, of R.J. Reynolds, right?
Yep.
And one of the things that they accused him of is he would use multiple corporate planes, and he would fly in one plane, and the dogs flew in another. Do you remember that from the movie?
Yeah, absolutely. So RJR Nabisco and their ridiculous fleet.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking that if you have unlimited private flights available to you, and then apparently you don't want the dogs on the plane, as we were kind of discussing, maybe it's not as much fun as we think. Because Johnson, I forget his first name, but I do remember
Ross Johnson.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. You're right.
That's a throwback. Yeah, so it's actually surprising how many pilots and people who own private jets are willing to lend their planes at very high rates to them to fly dogs around the country for all sorts of rescues. There's a guy in Idaho who does this nonstop, and he's spent over $1 million of his own money in the last year just flying dogs from high kill shelters to areas where they don't have enough rescue dogs to adopt out, and they're starting to fly our dogs, which we think is great.
That is fantastic. We're going to take a break, and we're going to come back and we'll talk some more about.
Hi, this is Grace De La Rosa, and welcome to the Scott Grant Show on 103.9 FM WSOS.
Hi, this is Scott Grant. You're listening to the Scott Grant Show on 103.9 FM WSOS. I'm here in Standfast Studios with Jennifer Price.
Yes, I'm ready to fly with dogs.
She's ready to be a dog flight attendant, if you missed the previous segment. And Rory Diamond, who's our special guest. I'm absolutely thrilled to have you. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Fired up. Let's roll.
It's been a fun interview so far. So before the break, we're talking about a couple of things. And one I kind of wanted to go back and touch on was veterans. And why shouldn't veterans be popular? And I agree 100% why they should be. But one of the things I always like to mention is that when I was a kid, we had a lot of veterans coming home from Vietnam that weren't that popular. So it is a change. It's not like a universal thing that we've always loved our veterans. In fact, to a certain extent, I would argue that a segment of the population hated the veterans as they returned in late 60s, 70s. Do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, the Vietnam era, just without question, has to be the darkest time when we look about how we treated our veterans. The biggest thing that bothers me is that you had a huge number of warriors coming home from Vietnam, and even those who didn't deploy, who committed suicide. We had this big bubble of veteran suicide, which we don't even know about or talk about. And then those that didn't, that survived, but still were struggling with post-traumatic stress, kind of white-knuckled it through life is what I call it. And so they were, just kind of getting jobs and having families. But now those same warriors are retiring and their kids are having kids, and all the things that were kind of keeping them alive are going away. And so we're seeing another spike in Vietnam era veteran suicide. And to me, this is what we did wrong in the late 70s and early 80s is coming back to haunt us again. And it's something that we have to do something about. It's really tragic to see this kind of echo from a really dark time in our history.
And you had told me earlier that 20 veterans commit suicide a day, and that's a modern number. Was it worse for those Vietnam guys?
Yeah, so I wish we could tell you. We don't know.
You don't even know.
Yeah, so we don't have the. And the other thing that's different between today and Vietnam and going back to Korea and World War I is that back then, if you were part of a blast or if something really bad was happening, you likely died. Today, technology is so good and the equipment is so much better that you'll be alive, but you will have suffered incredible trauma or had traumatic brain injuries, meaning that like the blast waves have gone through your head and changed the structure of your brain such that suicide is much more likely today than it was for, say, a World War II veteran.
Yeah, the World War II guys sort of white knuckle it as well, I think. They don't talk about it. One of the stories, I tell some World War II history stories. One was obviously the most popular, is about the submarine attack that occurred here in Jacksonville Beach in April of 1942. But one of the recurring themes from those guys is they didn't talk about it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't something that was done, and probably to everyone's detriment. I mean, I think about my own grandfather who fought in Italy on behalf of the Allies, got stuck in a small house, got bombed, stuck in a basement, and for the rest of his life, he was an alcoholic, didn't want to fly, didn't like going in public, was depressed, and had issues. And I look at that, and that's untreated, undiagnosed PTSD. And I can't imagine the hundreds of thousands, if not millions of veterans across the country who are just like him.
There had to be a lot. And a lot of them did deal with it, with alcohol.
Yep, absolutely. So same thing we're seeing with opioids, alcohol, all these things. The self-medication is a real problem. And hopefully today, and as we're getting better at this and we're more thoughtful about it, it's becoming less of a problem. I don't think we're there yet.
No, I mean, I think it's probably tons of work today. And it's refreshing talking to you because you kind of see the history of this stuff. And a lot of times, when I'm talking to somebody and I'll say, well, there were issues in World War I, World War II, and particularly Vietnam haunts me because I think I was alive and I watched those guys come home and be treated like they were criminals. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't even just like we weren't glad to see them. They were treated like criminals.
It was worse, yeah. If you look at the Civil War, World War I, World War II, and Korea even, you've got this great coming home, right? I mean, the services weren't there, but at least people were proud of you in your service. And then Vietnam, the services weren't there, and they were basically just junked on. It's disgusting. And that issue still exists today. I went to Vets for Vets last week, had a big coming home for Vietnam-era veterans, and they're still talking about it because it still hurts.
Still bothers them.
Yeah, it still hurts.
It's got to. I mean, and that was a brutal war. You know, you think about brutal wars, World War One. I mean, they're all brutal in their own way.
Right.
But you know, here you are in the jungle. Yeah, say you're 18 years old, 19 years old, and you're in the jungle.
Yeah, and in a very different way of fighting wars too, because it's not like where you're dealing with the Axis powers where you kind of know where they are and you're fighting each other with big battles. You're dealing with people you can't see, and who are underground, and a very different psychologically set war for it. And you had worse issues with POWs and MIA than anywhere else in our history.
That's got to be true as well. And so I think what we want to do right now is take another break. And we'll come back, and I'm really enjoying talking to you.
Hey, this is Jorge Rivera, your host from the St. Augustine Tonight Show. I find myself today here at the Scott Grant Radio Show on 103.9, known as WSOS.
Hi, this is Scott Grant. You're listening to the Scott Grant Show. I'm here in the studio with Jennifer Price and Rory Diamond, and we're just thrilled to have you.
Thanks. Hey, no, this is great, man. I appreciate y'all.
Now, you were talking early, and I think in the first segment, we talked about raising money and the buildings and the amazing campus that you have out there on, what street is it on again?
We're on Camp Canine Road, but we're across the street from the old Palm Valley Golf Course.
Okay. I've been out there. I couldn't remember the name of the street. And you've raised a lot of money. You've gotten a lot of support. And I know there's a lot of charities out there that are probably envious of how well you guys have done. What's the secret?
So I always say the most important thing is to be honest and upfront and do everything the right way, every time, every day, for the right reasons. And I know it seems like a mouthful, but we repeat it every day at Canines for Warriors that we have to be mission focused and honest, because if you do it the right way, you never have to worry about hiding anything.
That's good advice. You know what? It is a mouthful, but can I get you to say it again?
Yeah, sure. So we like to do it the right way, every time, every day, for the right reasons.
That's
great.
I
like that.
Do you?
Yes. I might have to use that.
We should turn that into a meme.
That is good.
with Rory's face on it.
There we go.
Now, you do so much in the community. How many hats do you wear?
I think right now, at this second, probably too many hats, but I get to be at Jacksonville City Council representing my home, which is the beaches section of Jacksonville. And then, of course, I get to be CEO of Canines for Warriors. And these two things are great passions. I love my home, and I love Canines for Warriors.
Wow. And then I see every day you're flying somewhere.
Yeah, I know. So for Canines for Warriors, we're a national charity. We've got supporters all across the country. People would be surprised to know that our second biggest state for donations is actually New Jersey. We've got lots of good supporters.
Right.
Go Jersey, yeah.
Exactly. So we have to go and see them, and we love to carry our mission and carry the message around the country.
And New Jersey's a big donor.
Yeah. So, if you actually look at number of dogs sponsored as opposed to just general funds, New Jersey's like number one by a mile. I think the entities there have sponsored about 350 dogs through Canines for Warriors, more than half of all of our dogs.
It's sort of interesting because, we have clients in our investment business that come from varieties of places across the country, but the two biggest states are Florida and New Jersey.
Yeah, there it is.
So we have that in common with Canines for Warriors.
I like it.
So, tell me you're the guy. How are you raising so much money? How are you getting so much attention? Is it just that the cause is so popular? Or is there more to it?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. First of all, we have humble roots here in Ponte Vedra, and we started on Roscoe Boulevard, and Sherry Duvall, who founded it, is a Ponte Vedra girl, and it grew up with our local neighbors supporting us, and we've never forgotten those roots. And I think donors, when they think about who to give money to, they know the humble groups. They know the ones that are focused on their mission of helping dogs and helping veterans, as opposed to just some big national charity and have no idea where the money's going. They know where it's going. They can come see it. They can pet a dog. I mean, that's powerful.
Yeah, local charities are popular around here. But during the break, you were telling me that if it weren't for Ponte Vedra, you guys wouldn't exist. Is that true?
Absolutely. We could not exist without Ponte Vedra and the people here who are incredibly generous, love veterans, loved rescue dogs, and saw what Sherry Duvall was doing down the road and knew that she needed help and rallied to her. I mean, they built us a campus worth probably $7 or $8 million for free. I mean, that doesn't happen without really great people.
And who are some of the people that have been the most supportive?
Yeah,
that you like to give a shout out to?
Yeah, absolutely. Right out the box, Roger Osteen, the Park Group, and the Davis family gave us the land for the original campus, and then gave us the land for this new campus. And then England, Thames, and Miller did all the engineering, and Summit Contracting came along and did all the general contracting. So that's Bob Fleckenstein, Mark and Nicole Paget. All sorts of great local folks have done so much for us.
So when we're here in Ponte Vedra, and we kind of think, we're not sure, but we think we are the only radio show that actually broadcasts from Ponte Vedra. So we like Ponte Vedra.
Absolutely.
And I'm thrilled to hear that they're a big sponsor and that you kind of owe your beginnings, your humble beginnings, to the folks of Ponte Vedra.
Without question. And to this day, I mean, if you come to any of our parties, you go to any of our events, or look on the wall and who's doing what, we're still a Ponte Vedra group.
That's great to hear, and I think, as I said, we're also Ponte Vedra people, and this is a wonderful community. There's a lot to be said. Ponte Vedra has an interesting and rich history, and part of that history is there's been a lot of people who either came from here or came to here who were big philanthropists.
Yeah, without question. So if you go up and down Ponte Vedra Boulevard, for example, you're going to find the people who are some of the most generous, not just in the state of Florida, but nationally, who are driving a philanthropic effort here, which is kind of unmatched. We're punching way above our weight as a community because of them.
And I think people like to give to local charities, as you said, there's some good national charities, and I have some friends who run national charities who also live here in Ponte Vedra, and they're great people. But I do understand, the desire to give locally, and I think I kind of like giving locally as well.
Yeah, I only give to local charities. I mean, frankly, if I can't go see it, that it's being done well, then I'm probably not going to give my money to it. But I always say Canines Forward should be your first one.
The first one? Your number one, you think?
Always.
Well, I think on that thought, we'll take a break.
I'm Michelle Joy Nixon here on 103.9 on the Scott Grant Show. Never forget, joy is always in.
Hi, this is Scott Grant on the Scott Grant Show, broadcasting from beautiful downtown Ponte Vedra Beach. And I'm here today with Jennifer Price and our guest, Rory Diamond.
Hey, rock and roll, let's go.
Yeah, I'm excited. It took me about 6 months to nail you down for an appointment here.
Blame my assistant.
Gotcha.
Yeah, we've managed to get some pretty interesting guests on the show, and I'd like to continue with that. And I think you're a great guest.
Oh, I appreciate that.
We had Jeremiah Blocker, Donna Deegan, Billy Boussard, Rick Deschler were some of the better ones. John Miller.
Jeremiah's great people.
He's a great guy. I love Jeremiah, and he's actually, we had met because he was a fan of the presentation I was doing about the submarine attack.
Gotcha.
And he's sort of a historian, and he had known Michael Gannon, who was from St. Augustine, was a professor at the University of Florida, and a historian, had written a book about the submarine campaign that sort of focused on the guy who comes here, the German guy who comes here and sinks the oil tanker. So Jeremiah was already kind of into that, and he came to a couple. I don't think he ever planned to come see me. I think he was going to wherever I was speaking anyway.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you again, Scott.
Yeah, I know. We had a few of those.
Lots of Rotary clubs and civic club opportunities.
We do.
Yeah,
quite,
it's
we
good.
have
Those are important groups.
But the other thing you do is politics. And the JEA thing's been in the newspaper a lot.
Oh, man.
and you're the guy now, right?
Yeah, so it started back in December when it occurred to me that there were some pretty horrible things going on at JEA. So I demanded that Aaron Zahn and other executives show up before a committee, and we grilled him. And the next day he was fired, and then the CFO was fired. And more recently, the council president, Scott Wilson, appointed me to lead an investigatory committee of JEA and what's been going on over there. And it's actually the first time in the history of the city of Jacksonville that an investigatory committee has been created, and to use our subpoena power. And we're after it. We've demanded 84 different types of documents from JEA. We're going to be grilling executives. And at the end of the day, we're going to get to the bottom of it. We're going to look over every single text, email, whatever it takes to figure out exactly what happened, because the people deserve that.
I like your determination. At the end of the day, we're going to get to the bottom of it, you said.
We have to. I mean, there's been a huge breach of trust between the people of Jacksonville and JEA. The only way you fix it is figure out who did this and why.
And what are your sense so far? I mean, can you tell us anything? I mean, who did it?
Yeah, I haven't been very shy. If you don't know, I'm not shy at all to say what I think. But yeah, so Aaron Zahn, I think, is a terrible leader of the organization. I think he wanted to profit personally to the tunes of at least tens of millions of dollars into his own pocket if JEA had been sold. I think other senior leadership were also responsible, and I think the board was asleep at the switch. At the very least, they were lied to, and they should have asked better questions.
That's interesting. You think people were trying to profit. That's not a unusual story.
Yeah, but in public service in this way, it's one thing for an executive of Enron trying to make a lot of money, but here we are in Jacksonville, Florida, and we're talking about our public utility. That's an unusual place for someone to come in and try and make tons and tons of money.
And we wonder why we can't afford to build an aquarium.
Yeah.
and other wonderful
Oh, do you know the
family-friendly.
aquarium story?
Yeah, I'm familiar.
Venues.
Absolutely.
We are involved in that project. I give presentations about the aquarium. We're fans of building an aquarium.
I like aquariums. I think they're spectacular. I love what they did in Georgia with it. But I mean, the issue for Jacksonville and probably Northeast Florida generally is that we have very old laws and we've got a system that's incredibly corrupt. I think it's one of the worst places I've seen in my entire life. I used to be a federal prosecutor and looked at these things. So we're going to go from what I think is like a D- transparency, clean government. And I promise you, I'm passing all these laws and the city council's on the right direction. We're going to have A++ cleanest government in the nation eventually here.
I'm impressed. Are you looking forward to taking on any more seats in government here in Jacksonville?
I'm going to need to do this one right. I already have 2 full-time jobs, and so that seems to be enough for now.
Well, and it's funny, you're talking about cleaning up Jacksonville government, and I'm thinking in my head, drain the swamp.
Yeah,
So
it's true,
Rory Diamond is going to drain the swamp in Jacksonville.
Yeah, we're halfway there. We've probably drained half the swamp. We got the rest of the half to go. And then the voters have to do their part and vote people out who don't support this effort for clean government.
Well, it's funny. You talk about corruption, and, I don't know what was going on, but I read some of the stories, and I followed some of the stories about you, and I talked to some other people who were at least aware. And I kept hearing corruption at all levels. And I'm not naive. I expect a certain amount of corruption in government. Maybe that's a low expectation, but that's kind of reality, right? But there was a lot of corruption. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I think we were one of the most corrupt places you're going to find anywhere in the country. I think we put Chicago to shame. And it was legal, a lot of it. That's what drives me nuts is that, so this project gets $10 million, that guy gets $4 million, hundreds of thousands for this sole source contract, all legal. That's why I'm working so hard to change the laws to at least make it illegal or not in accordance with our code to do this stuff.
Well, I think either party can agree we all want clean government.
Yeah, this is not a partisan issue. Everybody agrees. Clean government, everybody wins.
And now, was the mayor's office involved in the efforts to sell JEA?
So, I mean, what I've told anybody who's asked about the mayor and their team is let's look at the evidence. And that's the fair thing to do, and to review the evidence. The documents are still coming in. If it leads that direction, then we'll follow it. But we haven't seen the evidence of it yet.
Okay, that's good to hear. Obviously there were a lot of rumors out there.
Yeah, I mean, and look, there's a lot of circumstantial evidence that that they were trying to be part of this effort to sell JEA, but I just haven't seen the corruption part where they would participate in bonus plans and all the rest. I haven't seen that connection yet. Maybe it exists, maybe it doesn't. Whichever way it shakes out, though, I think we have to publicly state it in our report and be like, listen, either they did it or they didn't do it.
And I didn't realize you were a federal prosecutor. Where were you a federal prosecutor?
Up in Virginia. So I had a short stint as a federal prosecutor, and then my dad passed away, and so I needed to move somewhere. I moved my mom and my sister somewhere. We did a national search, and guess where we chose?
Jacksonville.
That's
so did
right.
I.
Yeah,
so
we
did
chose
I.
Neptune Beach, Florida, and we love it here.
Yeah, 15 years ago we moved here, but so say maybe 3 years before that, sort of looked around and based on the criteria, some of the criteria I had, one of which was I kind of wanted to stay in the same time zone. Ponte Vedra won.
Yeah,
and it was an easy one for us too.
Yeah, I drove from St. Augustine all the way up to Neptune Beach one day, right in front of the studio where we are now, and I fell in love with this place immediately.
And where'd you go to law school?
I went to University of San Diego, so I was out on the beach, and then undergrad at Michigan, so I'm a Wolverine through and through.
Oh, undergrad at Michigan. Yeah, I had a bunch of friends go to Michigan, either medical school, law school, or undergrad.
Well, you had smart, brilliant friends then.
So you were in San Diego. So here's a little kind of weird fact: you can't get from one coast to the other faster than by flying from San Diego to Jacksonville. It's the shortest.
That sounds about right.
It's the shortest distance by a lot.
Oh, I believe it. Yeah.
And so when in the early days of aviation, when these guys were trying to set cross-country speed records, they would typically fly, what we know now, it would make more sense to go the other direction, but they would typically fly from Jacksonville. They would take off here, and some of them take off on Atlantic Beach and fly to San Diego.
That's awesome.
And to set the record. And
that's a good day, by the way. Start your morning in Atlantic Beach and end up on Mission Bay. I'm in.
Yeah, I think actually some of the early ones were a little bit more than 24 hours.
Okay.
But you know what? I looked that up during the break. We got to take one. When we come back, we'll find out what that record was.
Hi, this is Mike Kaufman, and you're listening to my hero, Scott Grant, on the Scott Grant Radio Show on 103.9 FM, WSOS, StAugustineradio.com.
Hey, this is Scott Grant. You're listening to the Scott Grant Show, and I am here in our studios in beautiful downtown Ponte Vedra Beach with Jennifer Price and Rory Diamond. And Rory, before the break, we were talking about flying cross country in the early days of aviation. And so during the break, I went to check the record. And the guy who makes that flight is actually really famous, James Doolittle, Jimmy Doolittle. And he's famous because in World War II, at the beginning of World War II, he leads
Doolittle Raid.
The Doolittle Raid. Go ahead, tell us the Doolittle Raid.
Well, no, it's the first chance we actually got to fight back to the Japanese, getting right to them. They rigged the bombers so that they had almost nothing in them, nothing but fuel and bombs, and then they landed in China. It was an absolutely incredible story.
Yeah, I
didn't mean to cut you off there. I get so excited about it.
It's a great story, and I think they took
Finally
off,
got a punch in there.
Well, it's the first time we've it's shortly after Pearl Harbor. I think it's April 17th, 1942, a week after the submarine attack. That's one of the reasons I can remember the date. And that's the first time. And I remember one of the stories I always like is they ask Roosevelt, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, where do those bombers come from? And Roosevelt says Shangri-La, which doesn't exist, but military secrets.
Yeah, don't tell them anything if you have to, especially back then when there's no idea that we'd win this war. And so, I mean, there's all the reasons in the world to think we might not.
People were scared, and that we had not really had any victories, and this was sort of the first bright spot, particularly in the war with Japan. We bombed Tokyo. It didn't do a whole lot, except scared the Japanese, I understand. The Japanese got scared because we suddenly, out of nowhere, were able to drop bombs on their capital.
Yeah, and a piece of that story that people don't talk about is that the Japanese then sent bombers over San Francisco and Oakland and slowly flew over them, never dropped anything, but certainly scared the people in the Bay Area.
I don't think I knew that. But what, they flew over. I guess they didn't have enough fuel to actually transport anything.
Or to do anything, yeah, but it was enough to say, hey, we can get here.
That's interesting. That's very interesting. So, in any event, in the late 20s, Doolittle, when he's still not a general, comes to what was called, I think, Pablo Beach then.
Yeah, the entire section was called San Pablo Beach, yeah.
And he flies, he takes off from the beach in what was called a Havilland DH-4. And he makes the trip cross-country in 21 hours and 19 minutes.
It's a long day. It's awesome.
As I recall, he stopped someplace in Texas for fuel, so he doesn't make it in one hop. But he still sets, and that's a record at that point, 21 hours and 19 minutes.
Hey, I love our local beaches history. That's great.
Me too, by the way. I love a lot of the local history.
We should celebrate that as an anniversary.
Yeah, I agree. We should just go have Doolittle Day.
Yeah,
I love it.
Argue.
Airplanes on the beach. Maybe even just like a classic car show. We could have classic airplanes.
If you say cars on the beach anywhere near Atlantic, Neptune, or Jack's Beach, there will be an insurrection. So let's not do that.
So planes on the beach.
Planes on the beach. There you go.
Well, in the old days, there's all those old pictures of cars on the beach, and sometimes you look at them and it's not so much cars driving on the beach. It's like half the beach is a parking lot.
Right, exactly.
And that's sort of the good old days. And I always see those pictures and I go, I wonder how many cars a year get washed out to sea, because they're clearly in many cases below the tide line.
There's no doubt. If you look at those old pictures, plus the dunes weren't there, so they were just driving straight out.
And they didn't have four-wheel drive.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm sure there was a whole bunch of people that had to haul their cars out of the sand. It must have happened.
It must have happened a lot. I never see pictures of that. I always just see the pictures of all the cars and the postcards of all the cars, and it's a lot of cars.
Yeah, well, it's good policy to get them off the beach. I'm happy they're gone.
I think it's a good idea.
And the turtles, I'm sure, appreciate it too.
There are parts of the beach where you can still drive, or at least you could a few years ago. And I went down to Daytona with my father, and he was suffering from Alzheimer's. And my young son, who's 14 now, but was probably 5, and I drove on the beach, and they both fell asleep. Which was good, kind of given the circumstance for both of them. But I remember thinking, it's a good place to fall asleep driving on the beach, because you're driving slow and it's sandy.
It's mellow. Yeah, at the Outer Banks you can drive out on the beach, and if you look at it, I mean, it seems like a great thing for camping and all the rest, but at the end of the day, it kind of ruins the experience, in my opinion.
So, and we started off talking about JEA, sort of moved in some different directions. Any other thoughts on JEA?
So we've got to finish this investigation, but the good news is we've got a new board coming in, and I think the new board with Bobby Stein and John Baker and General DeFranza, a couple of other great leaders coming in, the entity will be in good shape, but now we just need to make sure we know exactly what happened in the past.
I think that'll help us perhaps from repeating those mistakes in the future.
Yeah, if we don't fix this now and this happens again in 10 years where we've got corruption in Jacksonville and all these other things, then I would have made a huge mistake. And so do the rest of the leaders today. We've got to fix it now so this doesn't happen again. That's our charge.
That's a great charge. And as part of that fix, you think we hold on to JEA, right? We don't sell it?
Yeah, I don't think that the city of Jacksonville will look at selling JEA for at least a generation. There may be some, reason down the road that it's worth looking at. I think you put everything on the table, but right now, no.
So right now you say keep JEA.
Yeah, it's not for sale.
I think at least the audience that we have in the JEA service area.
Hi, this is Dr. Arun Kalani. I have a passion for vision and fashion. And right now, I'm listening to the visionary Scott Grant Show on 103.9 WSOS FM.
Hi, this is Scott Grant. You're listening to the Scott Grant Show on 103.9 FM WSOS. And we're broadcasting today from Ponte Vedra Beach. And I'm here with Jennifer Price and Rory Diamond.
You've got a celebrity name.
Yeah,
Rory Diamond.
I'll take celebrity. That's the nicer thing that people say about me, so I'll take it.
It actually is a celebrity name. I didn't think about it till just now, but yeah, sure.
Hey, I get to do something cool next week. So Canines for Warriors always names a dog after the last year's champion, and so of course last year's TPC champion was Rory, and so we get to name a dog Rory, and I get to introduce Rory to Rory. So we'll have a try Rory moment next week at the Players Championship.
Try Rory.
I'm excited.
Cool.
Try Rory.
Have you had a dog named after you?
No.
Diamond?
And there shouldn't be. No, we name dogs after people doing great things for Canines for Warriors and our sponsors and all the rest. So that's where it should be.
That's great. I never thought about the name.
Is there an application for that?
Yeah, so it costs money though. So it's $25,000 to sponsor a dog at Canines for Warriors.
Whoa!
And so you get to name the dog. You get to follow its progress, meet the warrior. It's a great experience. It's by far our most popular thing that we've got going.
To name the dog, and you can name them after your kids, I guess, or yourself, or your spouse, or your parents.
Yeah.
Be interesting. I'd actually like to see a list of all those and see who people chose.
Yeah, so you've got they kind of bucket. There's the personal ones. A lot of grandfathers and grandmothers, especially those who served. Some named in memoriam of veterans who or active duty who passed away. So Gold Star families, and then a whole bunch of freedoms, liberties, chances. These kind of like ideas. These these words that mean so much to us as a community.
Freedom and liberty are great words.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I like to. We've had an honor. We've had several honors. We probably have more dogs named Freedom than anything else.
Freedom's the most popular name.
Yeah,
That's good.
It's great.
Okay, so one of the things you mentioned, and we kind of talked about, you went to law school.
Yes,
sir.
And
where'd you go to law school?
University of San Diego.
Okay, yeah, we talked about it because you were in San Diego.
Torero.
Somehow I remembered Michigan.
Yeah.
I remembered that you were an undergrad at Michigan.
That's right, go blue.
I grew up in Indiana, and I always had aspirations that I would go to Michigan. But I moved to the East Coast before I graduated high school, and I ended up going to school on the East Coast, which turns out being really good also. I'm a lawyer. I graduated at Rutgers School of Law in Newark, New Jersey. So we have that in common.
Look at this Big Ten action. I like this.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. Rutgers is in the Big Ten right now.
Whether or not we're happy about it or not.
Rutgers. Rutgers doesn't seem to do well in any of the sports in the Big Ten that I follow.
Maybe one day they'll get there. I'm sure they're good at something.
I think that would be a great
Curling.
job. I think it would actually be a great job on basketball. New Jersey has a pretty good basketball history, and there's still a number of prep schools in the Newark area that are nationally known.
Yeah, and I mean, look, they would have a great football team if their local kids stayed there. There's some incredible high schools at Bosco Prep and a bunch of others.
Right, Bosco.
But the Michigans and the Penn States and the Ohio States are coming in and stealing them.
And take them all, yeah. But now, Rutgers is in the Big Ten, so I agree. I think both those jobs, somebody someday will kind of come in like I think it's Schellenberger did down in Miami and say, look, if we get everybody within a 50-mile radius, literally, we're going to have some pretty good teams.
Yeah, it'll happen. There's just too many good players there. Chris Ash wasn't the right guy, but someone will come in and do it right.
And then you were a federal prosecutor for how many years?
For about a year and a half.
So, and did you practice law beyond being a federal prosecutor?
Yeah, I practiced law for about 9 years. I did mostly bank work. So I'm working with banks on their internal investigations, bank fraud, everything fraud related. That was me.
Good background.
Yeah, it's certainly helpful in one investigating.
I'd hire you.
Yeah, I'm surprised you didn't get picked up by the FBI at some point with that background.
No. So it's things always work out the right way. So you've got someone who's been a federal prosecutor who does bank investigations who ends up having to investigate JEA. It was the right timing. Hopefully, I'm going to do a good job at this.
One of the reasons I brought it up is there's kids out there. I'm not sure how many kids are listening to our radio show, but let's say that they are. And I always advise young people to go to law school. I mean, not as an absolute thing, but here's something to think about that maybe you hadn't thought about. A lot of times, I don't want to be a lawyer.
But that's okay. You don't have to be a lawyer. You can be an asset manager. You can be a city councilman.
You can be CEO of a nonprofit. I'm telling you, being a lawyer has been one of the best advantages of being CEO of Canines for Warriors, because I can read my own contracts. I can do my own intellectual property, employment issues, all that stuff. Like, I know it well enough to steer us away from problems before they happen.
I agree with that statement. I think I say that here sometimes. And so, I was kind of giving a shout out to the idea that lawyers do a lot of things besides go into court and represent criminals.
Yeah, how many people actually go to court these days? I mean, it's very rare.
When I meet the guys who do, and I do, I often say to them, I really admire you. I mean, a lot of us grew up with this idea that we were going to be Perry Mason or Clarence Darrow, and the reality is most of us aren't. Those guys who do go to court, they're pretty tightly wound.
They're a special breed. I have to say I'm one of them. I've done about 40 trials myself. I did a federal jury trial and criminal stuff, and it takes a level of intensity that's unique, I think.
And did you have you seen the TV show that they're doing on HBO called McMillions?
So I refuse to watch any legally related TV show because they all seem so fake to me. But maybe this is a good one.
Well, you should check it out because it's actually a documentary.
Okay.
It's about from 1989 through 2001. Every single prize that McDonald's gave away in their Monopoly game, and I think they had a couple other games, was rigged. And it was rigged by a guy here in Jacksonville, Gennaro Colombo. And the Colombo name should sound familiar.
Right, absolutely.
And it was investigated, discovered, and tried in Jacksonville. So there's a lot of people. I recognize some of the people that were being interviewed.
That's great.
McMillions.
I had no idea. Now I have to go check it out.
Yeah, you do.
I was already busy. You're killing me.
No, it's worth it. At least watch a little of it. It goes on and on and on and shows how these guys uncovered this fraud. A guy who worked for the marketing company that was representing McDonald's was stealing the $1 million pieces.
Oh, geez.
And giving it to a mobster here in Jacksonville who then was selling them.
We don't have mobsters in Jacksonville.
Yeah, I didn't think so either. But apparently this guy named, again, Gennaro or Jerry Colombo, and Colombo is a big name in New York, in the mafia, was down here, and he was selling $1 million McDonald's winners to people right here in the city.
Man, do not pass go.
Oh, Jacksonville.
It's funny, some of the Jacksonville stories. We got a few more minutes. Is there anything you really want to say to whoever is listening out there in our audience?
No, I'll just say this. Northeast Florida is probably the most wide open place to get involved in the community. I've never lived anywhere where people are so welcoming if you want to pitch in and get something done. So, hey, you can always reach out to me at rdiamond@coj.net if you want to figure out how to jump into our local community. But there's a nonprofit, there's a spot in government, a spot on a board or somewhere in Jacksonville where you can start to give, in Northeast Florida where you can start to give back. And if you're looking for a person who will help you connect you with an opportunity, you can always reach out to me or I'll point you in the right direction because this town's wide open and we need you.
That's interesting. You may get flooded with calls.
Well, I always tell people, I give them advice when I hear someone's depressed. The first step is volunteer.
Yeah, get out of yourself. Look outward. Don't be inward.
Yeah, I agree. I think volunteering is a huge thing. I would urge everybody to
changes your
volunteer.
Perspective.
And, kind of echoing your sentiment, one of the things I often say is that Jacksonville's been very good to me, very welcoming. I've gone out, I've given a lot of historical presentations, I've done some other things in the community, and very welcoming.
Yeah, you're pretty cool for a Yankee.
Yeah, even people say that to me.
Well, you can make an impact here, too. I always tell people, you could go move to Boston, be on every board, be the mayor for 5 terms, and at the end of the day, it's still going to be Boston. But if you want to, put your, shoulder into it here in Jacksonville, you can change. You can be part of the most important history, and in my opinion, the most important chapter in our history for the future of the city. So that's true for our entire community. Jump in. This is easy here.
And earlier, we talked a little bit about the aquarium. You like the aquarium.
I like them, absolutely. You
You
gotta,
know, we want to build one downtown.
but I'm in, except for no big mammals at the aquarium. That's where I draw the line. I don't like the idea of like dolphin training and all that stuff. I think I'm done. with it.
That's easy. We'll do virtual.
There
you
we
know,
go.
the funny-
Virtual dolphins.
The funny thing is that really is part of the plan. In fact, no mammals in captivity at all
Yeah.
is basically the plan. One of the few places you could go if we had an aquarium downtown and see dolphins in the wild
Yeah.
would be Jacksonville.
You could do a pen
Because they're
absolutely,
right,
yeah.
they're right off the
The St. John's.
the
Yeah.
St. John's. They come into St. John's pods. They call the families pods. So there's several pods in the St. John's.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you this. People don't know this, but I kayak off the beaches here, off Neptune Beach, all the time, and I see hundreds of dolphins, and people just have no idea there's all these beautiful dolphins out there. So come out to the beaches, get in the water, and actually get past the surf line, and you will see dolphins all over the place. Don't bother them, but you can see them.
My radio career is complete because I've got Rory Diamond squeaking like a dolphin.
Is that what you always wanted?
Yes!
So check
It's-
the box.
There you go. Her bucket list is slightly less heavy since you've been here. You know, one of the things to talk about when I'm pitching the aquarium, and I've done that some, is the 125 million tourists come to Florida every year, which is a really big number when you think that the population of Florida is about 25 million.
Right.
So for every Rory Diamond that lives here, 5 guys somewhat like you visit this state
And
every
they're-
year.
And they're cruising right by in 95.
Right.
And they have no reason to stop yet.
And that's where we say about 10 million of them come to Jacksonville.
Yeah.
And 2/3 of those come to see family or to go to the beach. So that's why we keep pushing the aquarium, is we want to promote tourism.
That's the answer to revitalizing downtown. It's more than football and beer. It's a family experience.
Yeah,
that
I
we
mean,
want to
we
create.
have so many pieces of the puzzle. Beautiful beaches, this incredible river, wonderful people, cheap, relatively living. And all these people flying down 95, they're already going right by us. So we just need to give them a reason to turn off and spend time with us, spend a day or two, and drop all of your money.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, spend a day or two. That's the key.
Yeah.
They got to come for more than a day.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
got to be more than stopping at the for gas or to go to Cracker Barrel. We've got. Thanks for being here.
Yeah,
You're
no,
a
this
great
is
guest.
awesome. No, I appreciate
I
you
would
guys.
love to have you back.
Oh, no, definitely. I'm down the street.
Okay, we'll do that. For now, we got to go. We will see you next week on the Scott Grant Show.